what I see is that we haven't figured out how to change it. I think that this institutional conservative nature of our institutions prevents us from actually transitioning ourselves to the universities that we need to be for the students of society that we hope to have.
Higher education is under unprecedented pressure: financial, cultural, competitive. These forces are pushing universities to act like factories, filling seats, chasing numbers, surviving another year. But exceptional leaders refuse to accept this as the only path forward. They're building community in their own unique ways, creating places where students feel seen, known, and inspired to belong. Their stories can light the way for others navigating this transformation. These are the architects of belonging. Well, Nathan, thank you officially for joining us on our video series. We have really been looking forward to this conversation, in a big part because Rock nominated you to join us. So we've
Thank
been
you,
quite
Rock.
eager. Yeah, we'll leave. I was going to say, are you going to say thank you, or am I going to say thank you? We'll jointly say thank you to Rock. As a reminder, like this video series that we started up, we've just been having conversations with other leaders in higher education, really for the purpose of trying to create space to talk about the pressures that are happening in higher ed and the transformation needed to build the higher ed of tomorrow. There is one formality that we do just at the start here. We call this like the LinkedIn intro, just to take care of telling people who you are.
Yep.
So Nathan, I'll do the easy part, which is to walk through that. You're currently a VP. You cover enrollment. You cover student life at UConn. You've been at UConn for like 14 to 15 years, but you've kind of been a bit of a lifer in higher ed as well. Your past has had a number of different positions. But if we put the higher ed, if we put the career stuff to the side, just tell us a little bit about who Nathan is. Rock gave us one thing, which was that this dude is Zen. So we're curious on outside of the work life, like who are we talking to today?
I'm going to immediately lower your expectations from this dude is Zen to something else, I'm sure. So, no, I'm a farm kid from Nebraska and was born and raised on a farm and went to the University of Nebraska. And I was always a guy that liked the outdoors. Never was, early in my life anyway, somebody that thought they would be in a senior level leadership role at a university. So I ended up here by accident. But what I do in my free time, I hike, I ski, I like to rock climb at the rock gym, not outdoors, but I rock climb at the rock gym. And that's what keeps, if I have any Zen at all, that's likely what helps me keep it. But otherwise, I don't know about Zen.
Well, I mean, I think you're pretty Zen. You give off Zen vibes.
Do I?
So
Okay.
maybe
Hey, listen.
the outdoor activities, and it gives you that balance.
Yeah.
And speaking of outdoors, we've seen you, man. We see you running all over the place in Shanghai in the rain. Yeah.
I do run too. I left that piece of it out. I do run. And I went for a run this morning. There was snow on the ground, black ice on the sidewalks. And it's trail running a lot of times that I do. So it's going through the forest and the woods, and I'm all by myself. And there's nobody else around. And that's just peaceful. And it helps me process, what's going on in my life. It could be personal. It could be professional. And I usually try to aim for 3 ideas on every run that I go on. And when I get done with the run, I try to write those down and act upon them. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense at all when I look at it later, but I limit it to 3 because if I get past 3, I've forgotten them. By the time I get to mile 3 or 4, I'm like, wait a minute, what was number 1? I can't remember number 4. So anyway.
If you don't mind, can I put you on the spot? Did you have any ideas from this morning?
This morning's run. I can't remember if I had anything from this morning. I was thinking through the agenda for today, actually. It's been a fun-filled day. So I'm chairing
Okay.
the search for our next CFO, and I just got off that call a few minutes ago, and I had some things I needed to get done ahead of that one, and a few other things that we've got going on. We're getting close to our application deadline on January 15th, so that was on my mind, and
Okay.
definitely trying to catch up with my daughter, who is going back to Purdue for her second semester. That was on my mind as well while I was running.
Nice. Okay. Well, it sounds like you had more than enough then
Definitely.
on on your mind there. One thing you had mentioned there was just kind of your early beginnings growing up on a farm, going to the University of Nebraska. I guess tell us a little bit like what was like your first experience of going into higher ed? Has that played any part into like who you are today?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I started as an ag undergrad. I thought that I wanted to go back to my hometown in Hildreth, Nebraska. Shout out to my Nebraska peeps that are out there. But I thought that's what I was going to do. And early on in my undergraduate education, I discovered that I didn't really actually want to walk through hot cornfields in 95-degree heat. I did that as an internship the summer after my freshman year. There's a lot of people who love that, do it, and are a lot better at it than I was. And I'm glad they're doing it now and I'm not. So I changed course and really enjoyed my communication sciences undergraduate courses. So I leaned into that, ran for student government, became student government president in 2001 when the University of Miami really beat up on Nebraska in the Rose Bowl in 2002 for the national championship game. I was there. But serving in the capacity of the student government president, it really gave me a front row seat to how a university runs and what goes into it. And that's how I started to get into this. We did a lot of things as student leaders at the time, that began to reshape the conversation around opening up a multicultural center at the University of Nebraska. That didn't happen during my time there, but it happened shortly thereafter. We had a lot of conversation around student recruitment initiatives, especially those targeted at underrepresented student populations back in those times. Affordability issues we were tackling, and so I have to give a nod to the folks that I did that work with, Jessica Lopez Stanfield and Nick Fitch, who were student leaders with me, and a number of others too. That we had a good time. But after that, I was going to go to law school, and I studied for the LSAT for about a semester while I was working in undergraduate admissions. And then the director of undergraduate admissions, Alan Cerveny, kept tossing different assignments my way. And before I knew it, I just forgot that I was supposed to take the LSAT. And the rest is kind of history. I ended up doing my MBA instead. And that's when things really started to click. I don't even think, like when I got in my MBA, I thought I'm going to leave higher ed. At that point, I'll do finance or, something else. But when I was doing cases in my MBA program at Nebraska, it made me realize that a lot of that work's applicable to higher ed and is desperately needed for sustainability and for our programs to thrive in support of our students and the initiatives that we believe in.
Yeah, that's awesome. We didn't realize that the MBA was also kind of a big moment for you on how to approach higher education from a sustainability perspective. So as all of that is forming in you, from where you sit now, what's your why to be in higher education? I mean, you went through all of that. Higher education right now is obviously going through a lot, which we'll talk more about. But then what's the inside of you driving towards and like trying? What's the why?
Well, first of all, I get in the car every day and I start to drive to campus, and I get more and more excited the closer I get to campus. So I just love this work, and I love thinking critically about how do we improve the experience. I love interacting with the students themselves and helping them along their journey. And I secretly love when people encounter barriers that we haven't seen before, that we're willing to dive in to figure out how to solve it so that they can get to where they're going. I think members of our team get frustrated with me at times. They say I have too many customers, people that will send students my way that they don't know where to go or what to do and how to solve it in terms of the challenge that they're facing. And that's what gets my juices flowing. I love it. It's a lot of fun to sit down with students, understand where do they want to go, and help them to identify a path to get there. And one of the rewarding things is that as our communities and our students become more diverse from different backgrounds, those challenges and barriers that they're facing are also diversified from their lived experience. And I just enjoy hearing about that. Not that we enjoy seeing challenges because we wish we didn't find them, but it's actually getting at the root of how we need to change institutionally to be um, more suitable to create. I think what you all want to talk about is this sense of belonging for students that have been left out of the system of higher education for, well, really since its inception. So that's why I see these as great opportunities. It's what part of my why is that, you know, I love to try and find ways to improve upon our institution and help students to get to where they want to go. And a lot of times I see myself in their shoes, or I try to. I know I encountered challenges, but they were different. We're not the same. We had different challenges for sure. So, but I love that part of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if any of that is a bit reflective towards because of your own experience, but you had just said there that you actually you can see yourself almost in their shoes in some ways. Uh, One thing that Lungi and I had seen, this was maybe back in earlier in 2025. You had written a post about um, that universities they need to do more, to than just prepare students. They actually drive economies, and improve human condition, and ensure sustainability. It seems like maybe there's some overlap there between that statement and what's driving your why.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was texting with one of our alums this morning, Coleman Levy. He sent me an article about the demographic forecast changing because of the immigration changes that we're now seeing happen, right? And so we will not be as much as a country, the United States, we will not be as much an importer of people, and that alters the trajectory in terms of what our population is going to look like. And my response to him dovetails with your question, which really is that there is a significant underestimation of the impact of people on our economies and on society. And it's actually studied deeply, and I only have just like a fraction of knowledge on this, but the impact that human beings have and how they move from different economies and around the world, and their contributions to those economies is understated and oftentimes misunderstood. So now let's relate that to our institutions, right? So as institutions, we know that this actually becomes one of the most important things that we do is to train and provide life skills to the people who come here for the service, the education that we provide. And it's not so literal. I think that it oftentimes gets boiled down to, well, the content of the course is, and how do we get that to the students? It's way deeper than that. The experience that the students have here, sure, they're going to learn a lot of things that they're going to be able to apply directly in their careers, but they learn a lot about how to be a good human being and how to support their communities and how to support one another as they're navigating something new and different. And we're contributors in a significant way to that. It may not be intentional. I would say most often it's unintentional in the way that that happens, but we're definitely higher education institutions. That's part of our product are the people and their experiences and what they can lend to the communities that they're going to enter after they leave us.
Yeah. And there's a lot of there's a lot of rhetoric, information about higher education being, you know, experiencing a tough time, and it is. You know, there's a lot of pressure happening competitively, culturally, financially. When you look at the landscape now, what are you thinking? Like as you know, I mean the higher ed and the history, the what you fell in love with, it's what you're hoping to do, and amongst all this pressure, what are you thinking at the moment? Like, what's the core thought?
Longy, people ask me, what are you thinking all the time? Or what were you thinking? No, the challenges are crazy. I, I've been doing this for a while, as you pointed out.
Yeah,
And to sum up all of the challenges that we're facing right now is a difficult task. I mean, I did it again as I was thinking about talking to you all today. And it continues to change. As I've visited with members of our team, I try to tour around to the different uh, areas of that are a part of student life and enrollment at UConn. And um, what I've said is that you can sometimes feel like you're spinning right now because you look left and you're like, oh, wait, there's that over there. And we got to respond to that and figure out what we're going to do. And then you turn left again. And you're like, oh, wait, there's that over there. And you're just
yeah,
like continuing to do that. And sometimes you're turning left to look at something that's there for a minute and then it gets canceled because it's determined, no, we actually don't want to do that for all the right reasons. And so we feel like we're spinning in response to these challenges that we're facing. So what I'm thinking though is, and I've said to our teams is in these times when we have these challenges coming at us from all the different directions that can make us feel like spinning, you have to keep your eye on your North Star. And I worry about institutions that don't have an articulated strategic plan and direction and haven't been cleared to share that amongst their communities. And I think this is one of the challenges that we're facing as well. We've done the work of establishing, like, here's our strategic plan, here's our North Star, but sharing that and making sure that everybody that's on our teams internalizes it, knows where they fit into the big picture. Because in a moment where we feel like we can be spinning at times, you need to be able to stop yourself from spinning and remind yourself, where are we going? What were we set to do? And I think that that's a big vulnerability for a lot of institutions, including my own, if we don't do that the right way, if we don't remind ourselves at every turn where we get lost, where we get distracted. It could be a bright, shiny object or a fear of a black hole that we might be falling into. We've still got to know where that North Star is and remind ourselves and keep ourselves accountable to it. So,
Nathan, do you feel like, to use that analogy of like spinning in the room and maybe kind of losing sight of where things are going, do you feel like higher ed in some ways has lost its way?
I actually think that what I see is that we haven't figured out how to change it. And
Mm.
I think that this institutional conservative nature of our institutions um, prevents us from actually transitioning ourselves to the universities that we need to be for the students of society that we hope to have. So we really cling tightly to things like general education requirements that made sense maybe in 1985 or 1995 even. And the environment, the world is changing so rapidly around us that it's inflexible. And I think that is starting to break things a little bit. So now I'm not an academic, so I'm not going to speak to what the core of that ought to be composed of necessarily. What I'm describing is what I see as the rigidity or maybe the inherent latency and um, uh, inflexibility of something like general education. And I think you can pick up on other parts of academia as well. So I don't know that we change quickly enough in
Mm.
order to be able to adapt to the shifting environment. And that is a huge disadvantage for us in the current environment that we're not able to course correct. And quite honestly, we ought to be trying to figure out how to meet students where we are and bridging them to what their opportunities may be and the needs, fulfilling the needs of society along the way. And I think the needs of society are changing, and I think that our students are changing, and I think that the opportunities are changing. If we're not changing with that, then what's happening? Some stuff's broken.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that higher ed has maybe lost its way, but almost that we talk about that like right now there is this reckoning happening. Um, it is fair that this reckoning is happening, but the fairness lies in the expectation that you must always evolve and change.
Mhm.
You know, the negative is actually thinking that you're you're going to be judged for who you are and to not change or evolve to something better.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And what's the saying? The change is the constant. So it's the only thing
Yeah.
that that we should know is going to be consistent. That things are just going to be changing.
Yeah. If we may shift then to, because it seems naturally that we're kind of getting there, like the responses that are happening in the industry. One negative response that we talk about a lot is this reversion to the factory model. It's almost kind of this concept of the change that needs to happen are schools feeling like they need to chase their numbers, almost focus deeper on just pushing students through like on the conveyor belt, to graduate them and get them out to their job. And that's kind of almost the change that is needed to survive. Uh, do you see that happening in the industry at all?
Oh, for sure. And sometimes institutions are chasing the rankings, right? Let's be honest. I mean, they want to be a higher ranked institution, and they see the metrics that are utilized in something like the U.S. News and World Report or um, Times Higher Education or whatever, name it. But to that end, they're saying, well, we need our graduation rate to be fill in the blank thing. I think that it's the wrong reason, though, right? We ought to be in this for making sure that more students come to our institution and complete from our university, graduate from our university, and go into society, into their career, into their life, with all the wind that they're in their sail. And that's why we should do this. And that's actually the failing in doing so. I think contributes significantly to this um, sentiment that exists, that a distrust for higher education. So it's about all of the adults who have some credits but no degree but debt from whatever it is that they attempted to do. That I think is at the root of the frustration that a lot of Americans have about higher education, because they're like, I tried that out and it didn't work out for me, and I left with bills and that I have to pay, but not the credential that was going to supposedly land me in this really amazing career in life. So that's what I think we should try to focus on rather than just the numbers themselves. The numbers are like an indicator of your starting point, let's say, in how you want to continue to improve. Where are you starting? Where do you want to be? But it's not just about the number itself. It's about the students, their experience, what we're producing. How satisfied are they with that experience at the end of the day? Did it really provide them the experience that they need in their lives?
Yeah, yeah. And we talk to people that they are in this factory sort of mode, but they don't want to be. Um,
You
what?
can easily fall into it. You can easily
Yeah,
fall into it. So,
yeah. What's pushing people though to fall into it? Is it?
mm.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the ground.
Yeah. Well, like I said, rankings I mentioned already. I think finances as well. Some institutions are looking at, their revenues and their bottom lines. And, every organization for that matter has a balance sheet that has to work out for them at the end of the day, right? So more and more, and especially when you think in the context of the demographic cliff and the demographic change in terms of our students, how many there are, where are they coming from, is putting institutions into rest, some of them more significantly than others. So the other factor then is, increasing enrollment. And again, it's a number, right? So how many students do you have, and what's the net tuition revenue that comes off those enrollments? And then you ask the question, how do we keep more of the students that we have to, let's say, optimize a bit more? You hate to think that that's being done just for a balance sheet and a good financial statement for the year. I don't think that there's an institution that would suggest that they do that for just that reason, but it's a part of the conversation that I think drives us deeper into the numbers of like just being all day talking about where are we with a particular metric. So important that we take a step back, more than a step back. It's important that we come into the day knowing why we're here and what we're trying to achieve. And, while it may be a stated goal on a website or a part of a strategic plan to get from point A to point B in terms of the numbers, the driving force needs to be, let's produce students that are graduates, that are, productive citizens and good people, that
Yeah.
can change the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm and I'm gonna push a little bit further on that, because you're the Zen guy. And you
I'm
can
trying.
take
I'm trying to
the push.
channel. I'm trying to channel the Zen. I'm trying.
You really are. You're MBA trained.
Uh-huh.
You're very familiar on what it takes to make an institution sustainable in any way. You understand the numbers. You understand the importance of meeting those numbers. Yet during this whole conversation, you still revert back to being student centric, and putting them first. And I'll make an assumption that you think that the numbers will take care of themselves as well. But that's a difference in a mindset. Why for someone like you who's so trained in the numbers perspective, you still have the student perspective? And I'm pushing harder on,
Yep.
it's easy to fall into it, but you haven't.
I guess you might say that I did student development first, and I know that I didn't have graduate training in student development theory and these kinds of things, but I did as an undergraduate student, which is a little bit unusual, right? Not a lot of undergraduate students spend a lot of time reading George Koo or something along those lines, but I did because I was an orientation leader as an undergraduate student, and I did because I was a resident assistant in the residence halls. So I was familiar with these things before I ever graduated with my undergraduate degree, and spent so much time talking to my fellow students, some of whom were not necessarily having a good experience at my institution, many of whom were having a good experience, of course, but um, seeing that and understanding it in an organic way and how it relates then to, student development. Um, I did that first before I got into the numbers aspect of it all. The numbers aspect of it all, by the way, I love. Like, I'm very analytical. I love the numbers, and more so, I like to be able to try to figure out. We've identified a need in terms of how we can improve the institution. Let's do that, and then watch how it can change. And one of the things that I really love is the iterative nature of working at a higher education institution, because you have a new academic year every year. You have a new class every year. You're graduating a class of students and putting them into their careers every year. And it just lends itself, that iterative annual calendar lends itself for us to take a step back and look at some of the numbers and ask ourselves, are we improving? Are we getting better? And the easy ones, the low hanging fruit numbers, are those grad rates. But there's other numbers that, our student experience at research universities survey that we run that actually taps into the sense of belonging and these kinds of things. These are things that we're watching as well. So really important that we try to find whatever indicators we can to understand the experience that our students are having, and that'll help guide us to how we need to improve.
There's a balance there. Then is definitely
Correct.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, it, so we've talked about that. There's one response to everything happening, which is yes, the kind of the negative side, going to the factory side, thinking about the numbers too much. Um, our perspective is that the right transformation to move higher ed, to make the change for a better tomorrow, is this transformation to community, where higher ed is taking kind of their unique opportunity to build something far greater, focus on actually building the whole human and for students to feel like they belong. Are we missing something in thinking that that is the transformation needed, or what transformation do you feel is needed from your experience?
Yeah. Before you ever reached out, we had started to and previously done analysis on student success at the university to the degree that we're trying to better understand the students who leave us. And what bore itself out as a part of that analysis is that there's three main buckets of reasons that students leave universities. One is financial. It stands to reason, right? Affordability is an important aspect. Paying and financial aid. How does that contribute towards reducing the barriers for students to get to where they want to go and graduating from university? The other is academic, and so students who don't do well academically, there's other interrelated factors to that, belonging being one of them, financials being one of them, financial stress, and these kinds of things. But ultimately, they didn't get the grades, and so therefore had to leave the university. The last one we actually characterize as low level sense of belonging. It's a very diversified group and reasons why students leave the university that is summarized by this low level sense of belonging. And it can be described for some students as they just didn't find a way to get plugged into the university in some way. Maybe that would have been through the campus recreation program, or maybe it would have been a part of student government, or maybe it would have been a part of the accounting club or something along those lines, or maybe it would have been a part of one of our cultural centers and programs, but that just didn't happen. Or maybe it was the roommate. They just had such significant issues in terms of relations with people on their floor and their roommate that it caused them to have challenges. But that is a very real and has been identified by us as a significant challenge that we're facing. And the difference between that bucket, I guess, and the others is that it's not well developed to identify those students where they are proactively. I think we have better mechanisms in place to identify the students who are having academic struggles, or for the students that are likely to face financial challenges. We don't have as many resources in place to identify the students who may encounter a low level of sense of belonging. But leading up to this, you had to survey about different diagnostic ways that we identify students who might be at risk. At the university, what I've described is kind of a vision that we're pursuing is we ought to have an array of predictive models that help us to identify the students across every one of these metrics, or buckets, if you will, or reasons that students leave the university, and again, meet students where they are. So that
Yeah.
ought to be our aim.
Yeah. That's massive. You're trying to measure belonging right now and see what that, what it is, almost like
We hope
a
to.
benchmark. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hope to. I mean, we have a student engagement dashboard that can help us to identify, who are the students that are measurably plugged in. And that measurable piece is important because we don't measure everything, right?
Yeah.
So there are students who are very well knit into the community, let's say, already, that it's not going to show up as a participation in a student organization or club, or that they went to the rec center, or that they did any number of different things, but they are actually connected. But we do know quite a lot because of our systems and the way we engage with our students. We do know a lot. So those things have yet to fully mature in terms of getting all the data into a central place to begin with. That's a challenge
Yep.
and a hurdle that we're continuing to face. That will be a never ending one, by the way, as we've described it to our team, because you continue to add new systems, add new ways to engage with students in these sorts of things. But then building the predictive models is a challenge, but the barriers to getting that done are being lifted now with AI. So that's exciting. But then the real grand challenge I think that we're facing is operationalizing and making the decisions as to, well, who intervenes, who reaches out, and when. And a model tells us a given thing. That's great intel for us. But is it an academic advisor, or is it the resident assistant, or is it somebody in one of our cultural centers and programs, or and why? Why is that the case? We haven't gotten to that level of maturity yet. And so we hope that at some point we'll be there soon. So we're working on it.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to double click on is that you do have this role that overlooks, you are very focused on enrollment, but you are also looking into the student life, which I get from our perspective seems unique. I mean, we have seen leaders at other orgs kind of looking at perspective as well as current students. But I guess just could you share a little bit about how does that influence your thinking around this? Because
Mhm.
you are looking at more than just one part of the student life cycle.
Yeah, it definitely is a big difference. So, when you're an enrollment VP, not universally, but for many, it's pretty front end focused, right? It's how do we enroll a new class every year, and it's looking at your uh, um, applicant funnel and these kinds of things. Working with admissions and financial aid, ensuring access and affordability, maintaining those principles, and so on. But when you add to it the student experience and currently enrolled students, it does change your perspective. I think that presents some opportunities where you can really think critically about the student experience itself and how that is a feedback loop into um, generating additional demand for your institution in terms of students wanting to go to school here. So the best marketing tool that any institution has is word of mouth, right? So students go here, they have a good experience, they go home for the holidays, at Thanksgiving table, they tell their aunt they're having a great time at UConn. We hope that's the case more often than not. I think it is based on what we hear, but we want to get even better at that. And I have the luxury of being in a position to oversee kind of both of those areas in terms of enrollment and student life. And the student life aspect of it it plugs me in very closely to what the student experience actually is, and also gives me an assignment and accountability responsibility to improve it to a large degree. And then that helps us on the other side. It also helps us find opportunities to tell stories back through our outreach and recruitment and marketing to prospective students as well.
Yeah. So with that, and so now you have this kind of like bird's eye view of um student life cycle. You're critically thinking through it, and you touched upon your vision a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more in this is a safe space. You can tell us your bold vision for for what you're thinking is the not only the transformation needed, but
Mm.
how you get from surviving, living to thriving, you know?
Yeah. Well, back to the earlier point, to some degree, we need to change as institutions to the degree that we need to recognize that our students that are coming to us now are going to be disproportionately first generation, low income, experiencing challenges that haven't been seen in the past. And I've heard this kind of flawed philosophy. I'll call it flawed. You said it's a safe space. Flawed philosophy
It's safe.
around, yeah, the bureaucracy is like once you've navigated that, that's given you some type of badge of honor. Doing that is kind of like what makes you who you are. No, no, I disagree because, and so, the hypothetical here is that we work to identify where is there bureaucracy and barriers and eliminate those. And the counter argument is what I suggested, well, that actually contributes to the experience navigating those challenges. The flaw in that is that historically students have not been so significantly first generation. In other words, they had somebody that was a co-pilot or in the back seat at least that could help guide them when they ran into a challenge, right? They could call and say, hey, I'm not sure what to do here. Like, oh, you got to go talk to, um, uh, call it out of Hamilton, the bursar. You need to do that. You got to go talk to them. Then if you're a first generation student, you don't have that co-pilot or somebody in the backseat, they're helping you. And so we need to make sure that is the bureaucracy or the barrier necessary. And if it's not necessary, let's move it out of the way. Still have to do the work in the classes, right? There's no removing the barrier of turning in your assignments, turning them in on time, having it be your authentic work and all these kinds of things. So that still needs to happen. You got to put in the work, but there is such a thing as unnecessary barriers and bureaucracy that we need to be willing to just kind of throw out.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. And thank you for sharing that with us. This was a safe space, so thank you.
Good.
Yeah. Nathan, we're gonna wrap things up here. And what we do at the end, Lungi and I will swap off here, but we do quick fire questions. So the first one here, and this is going to go back to kind of the first part of the conversation when you were talking about what kind of brought you into higher ed and your purpose behind it. So when you reflect on legacy, what is the legacy that you're hoping to leave behind in higher ed?
I hope that I'm known as somebody who, one, was kind, and also people cared about the institution and cared about the students. That's what I want to be known for.
Second one of the quickfire questions. Who's another leader that you admire in higher education that we should bring in on this series because they are building, belonging, or going through a transformation that you admire and are doing things that you admire during this current time?
There's so many. That's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quick fire. That I didn't do so quick. Let's see. I'm going to throw out two of my friends that I just admire greatly, and they know this, but Stacy Costell at Northwestern and Alina Hicks from SMU. Two of my dear friends that I have very good, authentic conversations about what are the challenges and how do we navigate these times together and how do we do it and do right by the students in our institutions.
Awesome. Hopefully we'll reach out to him. Hopefully we can get him on. That's the question we asked Rock when he mentioned your name. So
Is that right?
yeah. So you can say Rock again just to nominate him back. So he doesn't feel doesn't feel like
Yeah.
I nominated Nathan, but he didn't mention me back. What?
Come on.
Yeah.
He is actually doing really great things. So nod and kudos to Rock, and his TikToks are the best. I enjoy
the musings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the musings, the Rock Hall musings are just really great stuff. Really great stuff.
Yeah. We agree. Okay, the third one, second to last here. You did take this challenge that we created, which we created it just as a fun way for people to try to start the conversation on their own as well, and to start thinking about some of these things that we've brought to the table today. Just any reactions or any thoughts as you went through taking that?
First of all, I applaud you in terms of the questions, and I think that you've appropriately kind of sorted out the trajectory or the different levels that institutions might find themselves in with regard to the level of sophistication that they may have around a sense of belonging, or around the utilization of intelligence around your students, and putting that into motion, using it for good. So reflective of our institution, I think we're not all the way there. We have work to do. And I'm glad we have work to do, because it's work that it gets me excited and gets me wanting to get behind the steering wheel every day and continue to advance us. So, but I do hope that we get to a point of a higher level of maturity. I do wonder, though, whether or not the scale changes. It continues to be just a little bit beyond reach, right? We always just want to be a little bit better.
Yeah. Is nirvana reachable? Can
Correct.
you reach it?
I don't think so. You continue to try, though, don't you?
Yeah. And the journey is what they say matters, right?
That's right. It's the journey that matters.
Yeah. And this question is, I think, fitting to you, Nathan. If the entire higher education industry stopped right now, went quiet, and were to listen to you, what would you say to them in one statement?
Be willing to change.
Awesome.
That's it.
Love that.
That's I think that's a great cap on our conversation as well. So
good stuff,
well,
guys.
Well, Nathan, thanks for hopping on with us. We appreciate the conversation. I know you're an East Coaster, but if you're ever trying to get into the outdoors out west, I'm in Colorado. So if you're skiing or whatever you're doing, hit me up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to take you up on that next time I'm out there.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want a human like sauna, feel free to come down to San Antonio. You can sweat all day.
Warmth sounds great right now. So I was up in Vermont skiing earlier in the week as a part of the end of the holidays, and it was -2 when I got up one morning. So
yeah,
bundle up.
Yeah, couldn't do it. God bless you.
All right. Well, thanks, Nathan.